140. A lot of people checking in on this one. And we're just going to give people a minute to get situated before we get started. But Kathleen and Mark, I appreciate you guys spending time with us today. Thanks for joining us. From where is
Aaron? Important information to get out to everybody.
From where is each of you calling in from?
Go ahead, Kathleen.
So I am calling in from home. All state employees remote work as per the governor's order. So I'm calling from Hillsborough, New Jersey.
Nice. Mark, where are you?
Aaron, I'm in a home office in Bridgewater, New Jersey. We're also have switched to being all virtual, so we're all working from home offices.
Great. Have you found that people locally, we're about 330 people, we'll give it in about another minute before we get started. Are you finding that people locally are respecting the social distance policies?
Yeah. I'm getting out doing a lot of exercising on the street, either biking or walking, and it's funny how people sort of give you space even when you meet out on the street.
Yeah. How about you, Kathleen? You see people are respecting the rules?
Yeah, I mean, we're working long hours given the economic impact to all the businesses in the state, but when I can get outside of my home office, yeah, it's nice to have a window view and see people out and about walking around. Wish the pools were open, you know.
It is nice out today.
Yeah, thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
It's a difference in the mood.
So let's get started with some of the questions that are on everybody's minds. But before we get into that, just to set everyone's expectations, we are watching the Q&A. So if you have questions as we go, please do submit questions there. Hello, Liz from New Hope, Pennsylvania. Appreciate that. Feel free to chime in with where you're located in the chat. But we will be monitoring the Q&A area for questions, and I'll weave them in as much as I can as we go. Expect to go to about 1:15. We may go over, but we'll see. And so let's jump right into it. I appreciate all the chatter there. We've got some people from Freehold and some others. So Mark, if you could introduce yourself and explain to people a little bit more about what Tech Council Ventures is.
Great. Well, thanks, Aaron. And thank you very much for having me here today. And it's always a pleasure to be sitting alongside virtually, of course, my good friend, Kathleen Coviello. So thanks for having us here today. Let me start with the Tech Council Ventures. We're a New Jersey-based early stage venture capital fund. We invest in the mid-Atlantic. We're generally industry agnostic. We're just looking for terrific entrepreneurs and terrific companies. We generally invest between $500,000 and $2.5 million, and we're engaged investors. We believe that we're partners with our entrepreneurs and our portfolio companies, and we work diligently to support that. I've got two partners, Jim Gunton and Steve Sokoloff. They're both 20-year plus experienced investors. My background is really that of an entrepreneur. I've founded or run half a dozen different companies in the pharma IT space, the medical device space, and the healthcare IT space. And I've raised venture capital. I've had some good exits, and I've had at least one terrible exit. So I'm an entrepreneur turned venture capitalist.
I find that the market awareness of Tech Council Ventures varies. So what are a few bragging points for people who are raising capital from VCs and may not have heard of Tech Council Ventures? Why should they come speak to you guys?
You know, it's really because we are engaged investors, and we work. When I say we work diligently to help the companies, we do. Jim Gunton's first fund was at top 1% of vintage. Top 1% is exactly what it sounds like, and the reason it was top 1% in financial performance is because he made good investments, and then he worked diligently to help those companies. And an example of that is what we have is we've created a set of strategic limited partners. And these happen to be healthcare systems, providers, payers, pharma companies. We know that we are technology agnostic, but we do know we'll be doing a lot of investing in the healthcare IT space. And therefore we've got limited partners like the large providers in the state who can really help these potential portfolio companies.
Great, and we'll get more into that. So Kathleen, thanks for joining us from your home office. Can you explain a little bit about the EDA and your background, and we'll get a little more into the EDA programming shortly.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Thanks, Aaron. Great to see everybody on the line, especially all the chatter. Very interesting times. So glad everyone is here and healthy. For folks that aren't familiar with the State Economic Development Authority, also known as NJEDA, not NJEA, which is the teachers group. We are created by the state, but we are not funded by the state. So everyone always asks me that question: Are you government? Or are you not government? We're in government, but not we're of government, but not in government, which means we follow all their rules, but we're not part of the state budget. And our role at the Economic Development Authority is to help grow jobs in the state, and that comes from working with businesses primarily. My role there is really in working with entrepreneurial businesses, high growth, technology, and life science companies. Both those sectors fall under my purview. I have been with the authority for the last 15 years, and prior to that was in the venture banking industry. So I have about 30 years of financing high growth tech and life science companies. Our support at the EDA comes in all kinds of different forms. So you heard from Mark at Tech Council Ventures. We are actually the lead limited partner in that fund. So germane to the conversation today, we have a portfolio of support for companies. That includes real estate support. So we have an incubator in North Brunswick for life science companies. It includes credits. So we do administer some tax credits for the state that we'll talk a little bit about. It includes venture funds. So Edison Ventures, we're an investor in their portfolio. Tech Council Ventures, we just announced an investment in Activate Ventures, Osage Venture Partners, New Spring Health Ventures. So we're actively working with partners to help get capital out into the marketplace. We do some direct funding for companies, and lots of different things in between. So you'll hear a lot more about it. We know one size doesn't fit all. We have a lot of different resources to help companies at various stages in their life cycle to make sure that they sustain themselves to grow jobs.
Yeah, makes sense. Great. So we're gonna lean in on what some of the opportunities are for people now, especially given the announcement this week from the EDA. But let's start with a little more broad strokes. And let me remind people who are asking questions in the chat, I'm doing my best to monitor the chat, but if you have a question specifically, put it in the Q&A section, not the chat section. And George, I'm glad you like the upgraded background I got going on this week. So what should early stage businesses be doing with such a severe economic downturn on the horizon, or currently and potentially for the long term? Let's start with you, Mark.
Thanks, Aaron. I guess the question is, what do we think is going to happen outside? What do we expect the next 6 to 12 months to look like?
And how long? I mean, there's a variety of responses on how long people believe this will last. How long do you think this will have a major? Well, how long do you think we'll be indoors, and how long do you think it'll take for the economy to recover? And then I'll let you finish your answer.
How long are we? I'm going to let Kathleen answer that one. How long we think we're going to be indoors?
Okay, but then let's talk about how long you think it will affect the economy. How are you planning your investments accordingly?
Okay, absolutely for the next 12 plus months, no question about it. And Aaron, look, companies are going to be impacted differently by this pandemic. All right, and it's going to be all different. And I'll give you an example. My partner Steve was talking about a friend of his who sits on 2 different corporate boards, and he said, well, one was a large European travel agency, and in a matter of weeks, their business went from thriving to nothing. And he sits on a different corporate board, and it happens to be a ventilator board company. And in a matter of weeks, their backlog went from 60 million to 300 million. So people are going to be affected differently. But here's what I'll tell you. Everything is going to slow down, all right? Plain and simple. Everything is going to slow down. Even when we're not sheltering at home, Aaron, the industry is going to take a long time to dig their way out. Sales will be slow. Fundraising is going to be difficult. Your staff is going to be less predictable. Your supply chain is affected. What about the people that manufacture in China? M&A is going to be slower. The fact is, all these things are hitting, and you got to figure out how to plan and manage through that. And I can talk about that, but I'd like to hear what Kathleen thinks.
Sure. Kathleen, how long do you think this affects the economy, and what can people do to extend their runway?
Yeah, so I agree wholeheartedly with Mark. I think it's at least a year impact plus on the economy. I think entrepreneurs have to be smart about preserving their cash. And what I would say, so I want to emphasize some positive here. There's a lot of capital still in the marketplace, right? So there are a lot of funds that have raised money, and the EDA is a limited partner in many of these funds. The funds are only a 10-year life. They only have 3 to 5 years to invest that capital. So there is still capital available in the market for folks that are looking to raise money. What is interesting, I'll tell you, is that I'm hearing from entrepreneurs that they are still getting return phone calls. Folks are still willing to talk to them about investing, but they want to understand that they have redone their models and have a downside analysis and a realistic analysis on what the future is going to hold.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, one, Mark, you seem to have a lot of background noise. So if when Kathleen's speaking, you could mute, that'd be awesome. Or if you can figure out what that background noise is, that'd be great. But what's your response to Kathleen on how people should manage their portfolios?
Well, I think she's exactly right on that front, which is to say, you've got to plan and manage for what's going on here. In all fairness, in some areas, the demand will get pent up and it'll pop at some point in the future. But regardless, what you need to do right now, and Kathleen spoke about, revising your plans. Right now, what the entrepreneur has to do, what the business owner has to do is make a thorough, dispassionate analysis of every aspect of their business. You've got to assume that the points that I talked about earlier are going to happen. Sales are going to be slower. Fundraising is going to be difficult. Your marketing is not going to be as effective as you thought. You need to focus on the survival of your business.
So let's talk about that specifically. Do you think if someone has currently a year of runway, 6 months of runway, there are some entrepreneurs who might say to themselves, I'm going to go all in and go big or go home and make this cash last. There's others who might say, I'm going to pull back on a lot of spending and try to not make this cash last, try to swing for the fences and hoping that within 9, 12 months, I'll have accomplished something big enough to save the business. Others where they're significantly cutting costs to sort of weather the storm. So what approach are you telling your portfolio companies?
Well, in your example, and it really depends on what the plan is of the company. Generally, a venture-backed company, what they're doing is they're raising enough money in order to hit certain objectives and then be able to hit their next fundraising, hit certain milestones so that they can do their next round of funding. If people are absolutely guaranteed that they've got no problem hitting those milestones, that's fine. But otherwise, I wouldn't gamble on 12 months of runway at all. I was on a board call earlier this week, Aaron, and this is a company I'm invested in, but I'll tell you, full transparency, it is not a Tech Council Ventures portfolio company. But I was on this, and the CEO was going through a conversation about what changes he had to make. And finally, he said, am I overreacting? Am I cutting too much? And another board investor on there, and a guy much more experienced than I with a huge venture capital fund, he said, look, I got 50 or 60 different portfolio companies, and they're all reducing. They're all reducing their expectations and so on. He said, and his answer was, you are not cutting too much.
Yeah, I've heard VCs talk about this as being portfolio neutral and trying to look at the bright side of what's happening inside their portfolios.
It depends on the company, right, too. So some of the best companies were born in times of recession in this country. Think about IBM, Adobe, Disney. They all were born in recession. So it really depends on the germane industry that the company is in. But I think Mark hit on a key point, and that's communication with your investors. So your investors want to know that you're running the different scenarios, and you want to make sure that you're having those conversations with them on, do I shoot for the fences? Is this the right time for me? I think many folks on the call know that we stood up a chapter of Golden Seed in New Jersey, which is an angel group focused on investing in women-led businesses. We have a portfolio company called Little Passport there that does kind of at-home education about travel. As you can imagine, their sales are through the roof right now. So there are going to be certain industries that are really going to boom, and certain companies that are going to boom in light of the pandemic.
Yeah. So let's get into, and Mark, we muted you because that background noise. So we'll pay attention. You can unmute yourself, or we can do it as well. But just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Let's get into the reason I think that 400 people have joined us, which is really specifically on how can they raise money right now. What is I think in your case, Kathleen, what's the government doing to help? So Kathleen, can you and for those of you who are new, you can chat in the chat box, but we're not paying that much attention there. But we are closely watching the Q&A chatter. Kathleen, can you address specifically what the EDA announced this week?
Sure, happy to. So, listen, this is a scary time for many folks that are running businesses, and we know tough decisions are being made. We took decisive action at the EDA on Thursday, really with the governor's leadership and direction to try and stop the bleeding quickly in a targeted way. And so our board yesterday approved over $40 million of funding off the EDA's balance sheet to work with primarily our partners to get money into the marketplace really quickly. And there are, I want to say, 6 different resources. Most of them are focused on the immediate needs of Main Street businesses. So first and foremost, there's a grant program for small businesses based on the number of employees a company has. The businesses can't have more than 10 employees, and they have to be in one of the targeted industries that are retail-like Main Street businesses. For other folks, there is a 0% working capital loan. We know that's not going to work for everybody because you have to have debt service coverage ratio, which basically means you have to at least be breaking even, and you have to have collateral. We're pushing money out into the marketplace through community development finance institutions, CDFIs. And so these are micro lenders that really help the really small businesses.
And how much money are we talking about there?
We are talking about anywhere from a couple thousand to 10,000 per business. So small micro loans. And then we are also, for our entrepreneur group, which is probably many of the folks on this phone, what we tried to think about is, okay, most of the entrepreneurial businesses don't go to banks. They don't go to the CDFIs for funding, but they go to investors for funding. So the program that we announced, which will target really the folks that are working with outside investors, is an entrepreneur guarantee program.
Yeah.
So if you have a incumbent investor who is on the fence, quite honestly, many of the angel investors lost a significant portion of their liquidity. Many of the VCs or corporate investors are analyzing what they should do, which companies they double down on, and which ones they walk away from. We have a tool that we will guarantee up to 80% of the funding that they put into your company. So an existing investor, they can put up to $250,000. It's a 1-year note, so you don't have to negotiate terms. It's probably not the best time when you need cash to start negotiating on how much equity you're going to give.
And is this based on the last fundraise?
So there's no pricing on it. It's a note. So
but based on the terms of the last fundraise, or do you set the terms in the note already? How are the?
So what we've said is it has to have a note. It has to be a note with at least a 1-year maturity, no payment, no collateral. It can have a conversion feature down the road, that's fine. But for 1 year, the entrepreneur gets that funding.
And that's, let me just make sure I understand this. That's for an amount up to 80% of the 250. Is that correct?
Right.
Now, what if they need more money or raise more money? That's the maximum that the EDAs can guarantee. Is that right?
Per company, 200,000 per company. Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, we have a $5 million pool. And I said, we know this $40 million of programming is not enough to address the impact that is going to be felt from this COVID-19 downturn in the economy. But what we wanted to do was start to do something, right? So that when the federal funds come in, hopefully we're going to get a state block grant. We have things stood up, and then we can start to get money into the market quickly. And then kind of Gen 2 product will be once we start getting the federal funds in behind this.
So I want to hear more about the other programs, but specifically on that one, especially because we have Mark here with us. Mark, I'm curious how that changes your views on investing. If you had a company where you could participate with a $250,000 investment and know that the EDA was backing it up to $200,000 of that investment, how does that change your approach to investing in the short term?
Pardon me, that it's obvious that's a huge benefit. Anytime you feel like you're being backstopped on something like that makes it a lot easier. And there's money in the market. There's a lot of us that have money that we're looking to deploy. So that's a fabulous benefit. And I know that my peers are going to be very, very pleased about that.
Did the and a reminder, I did catch this question, Muli, in the chat, but please try to pop the questions in the Q&A area. Do the companies or the investors have to be in New Jersey?
So the companies absolutely have to be in New Jersey, and they have to have 50% of their W-2 employees at year-end 12/31 in New Jersey. And we're going to measure that with the company's NJWR 30 tax form.
And so, since I have no idea what that tax form is, what if people are New York based, but 50% of their talent is now working at home in New Jersey? Is that a loophole that anybody's going to be looking at? Should people be thinking about that kind of thing, or does you have to really be headquartered here?
Yeah, so that's why we cut with the cut date is December 31, 2019. Everybody will have their tax forms done. And so that NJWR 30 has to show 50% of your total employees are in New Jersey.
Got it.
The company also can't have more than 5 million in revenues, and they can't have more than 25 employees. So again, our first line of attack is on the small businesses that we know are going to feel the pain most severely right now.
Do you expect
the investor, though, Aaron, to your question, sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead, keep going. That's part of the deal with the digital meeting. It's harder to read, so just interrupt when necessary.
The investor can be anywhere. So, similar to the investor tax credit program that we administer at the EDA, we're happy to take money from out of state into New Jersey. And we know that for many of our companies in state, they raise capital from out of state and even out of country. So it doesn't matter where the money's come from, but we are saying that the investor already has to be supporting the company. And part of our thinking in that is, at a time when you're in this crisis mode, easiest to turn to somebody you're already in business with, who knows your business, who's given that vote of confidence and invested in your company already. And we think that'll help get the cash to the entrepreneurs quicker.
Got it. Do any of these programs require a personal guarantee? There's some questions about that.
No personal guarantees on the entrepreneur guarantee program.
Got it.
On the grant for the Main Street businesses, the restaurants, the bars, the retailers, it's a pure grant, $1,000 per head. There's a $5 million pool there, no guarantee on that. Our more traditional 0% loan and working with the community development finance groups, they usually do have guarantees.
Go ahead, Mark. What was your response there?
I think Kathleen makes a real good point, which is if you're looking for money, you got to work with people you already know. This is a tough industry, and what's going on is venture capitalists, they like to meet the people they're investing in. They literally want to see them and talk to them, and it's going to be hard to start new relationships in this world of video conferencing. So you want to get with people you've already got some relationship with, and certainly your current investors are the ones to go to. So without a doubt, that's the right answer.
And some follow-up there. Are you saying that you'd rather not meet new people right now, to be clear? Because there's a lot of people saying, how do I get in touch with Mark and Kathleen?
No,
We'll
no.
get to the Kathleen part in a second.
No, absolutely. And our fund is, we're still early in our fund. So we're in first, absolutely in investing mode right now. And yes, we absolutely want to meet new people. And I'd love for you to, send out my contact information after this for sure. But I'm just saying, expect it to be more difficult because at some point you've got to meet the person in person, and we're still being pretty focused on social distancing. So, but no, absolutely investing right now, particularly our fund, and I know other local funds are as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Kathleen, how do
we'll
people,
add to-
there's a lot of questions about like, how does this work? How do I apply? How long does it take? And some of it, I think is getting to like, is this worth my while based on the time frame? So can you address some of that?
Yeah, so we're working in real time. There is a website for everything business related in the state. It's cv.business.nj.gov. And I'm going to repeat that again. CV as in COVID nj.biz. I'm sorry, cv.business.nj.gov. cv.business.nj.gov. And what you will see on there is that is your resource landing page for everything business around the COVID response in the state. What we have on there today is scripts on what the programs look like. There's a chat box on there that you can ask specific questions. My team and folks around the state are all manning those chat boxes, a lot of hours.
I believe the word is staffing.
We are staffing in the chat boxes too, yes. And then what we hope to launch early next week is a pre-qualifier, a widget that you can go in and say, I look like this, will this program work for me? And it will direct you. So we're really, for the first time in the state, driving with technology to help people self-select on what resources will work for them.
That's great. There are more than 50 questions here, so I'm going to try to run through a few more. But Dino's asking, what are some of the most important criteria for deciding who gets the funding? And what I don't think I heard in that response is how long do you think it would take?
Yeah, great questions. So we hope to have applications up within the next week and a half. The first step before that is this pre-screening so that folks know whether or not to actually submit an application. The good news on the Entrepreneur Guarantee Program, which I think is probably what's most germane to this group, is that the investor can put the money in and then get the guarantee. So they don't have to wait to put the money in. All the terms are on that website, and I'm happy to run through the terms with anybody as well. But we don't want to be, a cog in the wheel here. We want to keep things moving so that the entrepreneurs get their money as quickly as possible. Was there another question there I missed, Aaron?
I don't think so. That's okay. Christians asked, with face-to-face events on pause for a while, what are your thoughts or suggestions for alternative fundraising options to support the mission of a nonprofit or a trade association, which I can certainly relate to as leading one of those in the New Jersey Tech Council. I'm wondering what you're looking at. There's a variety of these around the state. Are there options available that you think will suit those groups?
Yeah, so a lot of people are in digital right now, and it seems to be working well. And again, this is a pause for now, but we know it's not into perpetuity. So I'll give you an example. Even I mentioned Golden Seeds, which is our angel group that focuses on women-led investments. We held our office hours on Wednesday via Zoom. We did a full presentation, and then we broke out into rooms and had one-on-one meetings with entrepreneurs. So, you definitely miss something not being face-to-face, but don't hide don't hide indoors.
Don't wait it out. Yeah,
you
got to adapt. I mean, that's exhibited by what we're doing here, right? 400
Yep.
people doing exactly that.
Yep.
Mark, what would you look for in investing? What would you look for as a criteria for people who are looking to raise money now and considering Tech Council Ventures as an option? What are some of the criteria you'd look for?
Well, that really can't change based on the circumstances per se. We're still looking for terrific entrepreneurs and terrific companies. We're looking for solid plans. We're looking for realistic plans, plans that says, here's, given the circumstances and so on, here's what I believe I can make happen. There's just got to be a lot of realism in this.
Yeah.
But as Kathleen said earlier, I mean, there's still a lot of great stuff going on, and there's still a lot of opportunity right now. We can't be, this is tough. It is a real tough time, but there's still a lot of great things that are going to happen. As the cliche goes, chaos brings opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And so part of it is you've got to look around and say, is there a way I can adapt to some of this? If you think of the things that are growing right now, telemedicine is going up the roof, remote patient monitoring, anything to do with video. And logistics and delivery, what's going on. Amazon's going to hire 100,000 people just to deliver stuff. So there's lots of parts of our economy and businesses. And if you can adapt to that, if you can do something, look at Zoom stock. If you can do something to adapt your offerings to video, I think there's a lot of things you can do from the business side of things.
Yeah, agreed. Brenda was asking Kathleen about the grants available to small businesses. I think you covered this, but she's asked about the application process. Is there someone who can assist? It sounds like the loans are so small that it may not be worth hiring someone to assist, but these things can be tedious. Any response to that? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the grants, the $1,000 per full-time equivalent. Again, it's for if you have 1 to 10 employees in the state, if you're in retail, food service, arts and entertainment. So really the Main Street businesses, it's going to all be online. So that cv.business.nj.gov website, there will be a widget up there in the next week or so, and you will do everything electronically. It should be as simple can be. We're going to have it market tested before it launches, but we are trying to streamline it so that it's as efficient as possible. The feds, as I mentioned, are coming out with their program and stimulus package, and that will work with the SBA department. We know the SBA is difficult to work with. So outside of this package that we put together, EDA is contracting out with groups that are familiar in the SBA application process. And we will be announcing who gets those awards soon, but we are building the troops to help and provide technical assistance to folks that want to apply for the Fed stimulus fund. So certainly that is at top of mind and something that we hear on a regular basis.
Someone's asked a question here that I'm hoping is a bad rumor, but I want to see if you can clarify. Leo said that he heard that there's a bill pending in New Jersey that employers, instead of the state unemployment division, will pay for unemployment benefits. Do you know anything about this?
I don't at this point, sorry. There's a lot of rumors floating out there. There's a lot of legislation being drafted that never quite moves. So until I see it in black and white, at least in a draft through both houses, I wouldn't worry about it.
Are there any programs specifically targeted towards minority-owned businesses?
Yeah, so that is certainly a focus of a lot of what we're working on at the EDA. I know Newark just launched some programs as well. So yes, I think folks may have heard the enhancement to the Angel Investor Tax Credit Program. There's a 5% bonus on there. So if you invest in a New Jersey business and it meets the program criteria of 75% of your employees in New Jersey, the investor can get a 20% refund or return on their investment through a tax credit. There's a 5% bonus if that is a woman or a minority fund, or a woman or minority business. The other thing that we're working on standing up a fund focused on Black and Latinx entrepreneurs. There is information on our website about that. We're looking for input from the community on that. So that still continues to move forward. So those are two of the ones that are top of mind that I would share with folks.
Got it. Mark, what is, someone's asking about the best way to approach you, and normally I'd ask about the best way to pitch in general, but I wonder, especially now in this environment, assuming you take a meeting through Zoom and someone shares a deck, what's the best way for someone to capture attention, and what's the likelihood you think you could actually close a deal fully virtually right now?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to close a deal fully virtually. If something works out virtually that gets close, I'm going to insist upon meeting someone, even if I have to stand 10 feet away from them.
That's interesting, by the way. And I don't think that's generally, like, I think you'll get very mixed views in the VC market about that. I think there are definitely venture capital partners who are willing to close 100% digitally, but totally, you know, I'm glad that we're clarifying some of these things.
Well, you know, we're a mid-Atlantic fund, and we make a point to be able to actually connect and get with the folks we invest in. And I would want to actually meet someone across a desk, even if the desk is 10 feet. But it doesn't matter. To answer your question, right now, we're looking for great companies and great entrepreneurs. And if people want to send decks in, or even better, just send in a one-pager that gives us an idea of the business, we'd love to look at what opportunities are out there. Again, yeah. We just want solid entrepreneurs with solid plans that understand the economy, that are realistic, that know that it's going to be, you know, what it's going to be tough. And look, there's a lot of great ideas. Yesterday, I saw something else that I've said, this is going to do fine through this economy. So there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah. Kathleen, are there some other programs here, you know, for those who may not qualify or be interested in equity? What are some of the other loan programs that they should consider?
Yeah, so if you don't want to give up equity in your business, one of the most unique programs that we have is the ability to sell your losses. So, you know, I often meet with entrepreneurs and they're like, well, I don't have collateral, I don't have investors, I don't want to give up equity. And I'm like, well, what do you got? You got losses. So fairly unique in New Jersey.
We're good at losing money.
You're losing money and I can help you. That's a good thing. You can turn those losses into cash. Now, I will tell folks it's a couple months cycle turn. So don't expect it immediately. But you can accumulate those losses. Applications are going to open May 1st. It's a $60 million pool of funding. The average award last year was $1.2 million. So $1.2 million, non-dilutive funding. You don't have to give up any equity. You have to have intellectual property. So if you're a B2B software company, you just have to copyright that software at the Library of Congress, which you can do yourself without even hiring an attorney. You also have to have accountant prepared financial statements. So if you're thinking about what do you do in this, you know, time to get ready for something like that, we do know lots of accountants that are doing virtual audits right now. You just need a compilation. Just somebody who's looked at the numbers and say, yeah, this makes sense.
Got it.
Yep. So that's a great resource for folks.
Krishna, hopefully I got to your answer on the application process. It is directly with the EDA. Someone asked about sole proprietors and home-based businesses. Are they eligible for some of these grants or the loans? It looks like he said that he's read the fine print and he feels like it specifically excludes that category. And can you clarify that a bit?
Yeah, so each one is a little bit different. So I don't want to blanket brush it. So like for the guarantee program, the investor guarantee program, you can be a home-based business or a sole, but you have to already have funding. So each one has a little bit different nuances. Again, go on that website. And this is our first blush. So this is what we heard from the market instantly, ways that we thought we could help. We know it's not going to fit everybody's needs and solutions. We are hopeful that the Fed stimulus package, the CARES Act, is right behind this, along with state block grants that we hope to get out to help the market in a more significant way.
Mark, there's some chatter about VCs being a bit opportunistic and in some cases being accused of being predatory. And I wonder what your view is on this. I mean, VCs are built to make money. They're often negotiating their best deal terms in normal times. How would you know, what's your approach here if you see someone who's potentially a little bit more desperate, but has a really good business plan or business opportunity? How do you think, Tech Council Ventures would approach that?
You know, there's two issues there. You're asking a question, I think, largely about valuation. All right. And here's what happens. Valuations, first of all, the public markets are way down. Well, the private market valuations, they often correlate with the public markets. That's just how it works. The fact is, the public markets, you're either using them for a comp or you're using the public market as an M&A, as a way to get an exit. So it's likely that valuations will come down in this period. I think we all just have to focus, have to face up to that. Yeah. I think I would reject the predatory thing. I think that deals that are in the hopper right now I'll bet that most VCs, if they've got a deal that, let's say, that's already got a term sheet out, I bet they'll probably stay with that price. But I think you have to consider going forward that valuations are going to be under a lot of pressure. My advice is get the deal done. My advice is focus on the terms of the deal and not be as focused on the pre-money valuation. And when you think about that, Aaron, some of those terms like the anti-dilution and liquidation preferences and so on, those are really important in the next round of funding too. So get those right and be a little flexible. And right now, get the deal done, because we don't know how long this is going to go, and we don't know how long it's going to be difficult to raise venture money.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
Aaron, I would add, it depends on who's the investor, right? So the VCs have to get the money into the marketplace. As I mentioned, the EDA is an LP in a number of funds. You know, certainly we're seeing valuations come down a bit. If you're working with private investors and angels, there's ways not to price the round, obviously. You can do a convertible note, you can do a safe, but there are certainly ways that you could stretch out the time horizon before the round is priced.
Yeah. So our friend Esther Sturgeon is joined us as well, and she said that her question is, do you expect there to be additional programs for entrepreneurs? It's a question she's getting quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, first blush, this is what we have the resources for and where we think the market is bleeding the most. But we absolutely expect there to be a version 2, a version 3, a version 4 behind this. Again, waiting to see what the final Fed package is as well. We don't want to be duplicative. We want to be complementary. And we want to see what resources come from the feds to the states.
There are a variety of questions about how much revenue the company has to qualify, whether they're pre-revenue, a seed stage, they're going out for their first round. And maybe you said this, it's a little hard for me to look at the questions and listen all the time, but if you did say it, can you repeat, or if you didn't, can you clarify on exactly who qualifies for the guarantee program? And also, if there's an option, what if they can't convince a VC, a Mark, to write them a check? Is there any other option for them outside of the micro loan, which sounds like it's more retail based, if they can't get an outside investor?
So for the investor guarantee program, you have to have 50% of your employees in New Jersey and be under 5 million in revenues and be under 25 employees.
So pre-revenue, early stage, all works.
All good. Yep. Yeah.
But you have to convince a VC to write a check.
You have to convince one of your current investors.
So does that mean that you specifically can't bring a new investor in? Is that correct?
Correct. It's for current investors only. And again, to some of that commentary around pricing.
So it might be an angel investor as well. It doesn't have to be a VC. It might be one of your angel investors.
But that angel, it has to be someone currently who has some equity in the company.
Exactly.
Who is an investor, to clarify, in the company. Got it. I'm sorry, keep going.
Yep. But again, so EDA has other funding sources. As I mentioned, we have the investor tax credit program to incentivize new investors to come into companies.
Yeah.
We have the net operating loss program to help you sell your losses. If all goes well, on June 3rd, we're going to have our Founders and Funders event where we match you up with investors. So there are other resources. EDA's kind of bread and butter traditional lending programs work when the company has some historical cash flow and personal guarantees. Now, I think the interesting thing from what I've read so far in the federal program is that the SBA is going to abandon some of their traditional requirements around collateral and personal guarantees. So if folks have been keeping up with the federal legislation, there is this payroll program where they'll fund 2.5 times your payroll. And there are some opportunities for that to go into a grant. So again, we're waiting to see what the final numbers are, final packages are going to be out of the feds, because we want to make sure that we're not duplicating with our scarce resources what the feds are coming up with.
Got it. Someone's asked an interesting question here about could the guarantee, and the question was asked, is the 80% match? Just to be clear, this is an 80% guarantee as a backstop to give investors safety, just to be clear. But is that guarantee could it work for someone who's made an in-kind investment? And they've said specifically, like they work with a professional services firm, they've invested $300,000 in services. Could that qualify?
No. And the reason being, we want cash into companies. So it was designed to get cash into companies quickly to help them fund payroll.
Yeah. Someone else said, we're not in New Jersey. Should we move there for New York? The answer is yes, but unfortunately you won't qualify for this program because you had to have been here in 2019.
Right.
Someone else said, what does New Jersey mean? Work, also live. I think specifically it's about your business filed a return in the state. Is that right?
Yep.
In 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So someone else asked for clarification on what counts as an investor. And I think you just answered this, but an advisor with equity or a note holder, would they count?
It would be, a note holder could count as long as they put cash into the business previously. Yep. And I know Jasmine put up, and I saw in the comments, in the chat, somebody shared the website with the CV website, cv.business.nj.gov. So again, we've put program specs out there, and some of this is covered, but if we don't get to everybody's questions today, put them in the chat box and we'll get back to you.
We definitely won't. There's 80 of them. But we are aggregating all of the links on the njtc.org COVID resources page. So any of the stuff you've heard here, including this webinar, will be shared there. I'm trying to scroll through quickly. Any programs for firms over 5 million in revenue?
We expect the federal programs to support that market set.
Got it. And just as a program note, it's 119. I have noticed that. We're probably going to go till about 1:30, but we will wrap up shortly. Does the grant, someone asks, does the grant also apply to the owner of the business who's not a W-2 employee and therefore not on payroll?
So for the Main Street Grant Program, it's measured by the number of employees on payroll today.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to rapid fire a few more here. Someone says, do the founders count as incumbent investors for the 80% guarantee?
That is a good question. And that is one of the FAQs on the website. So it has to be a third-party arm's length investor.
That's a bummer, but that's good to know. You know, I think in principle, this kind of begs the question of government's role in all of this. And I wonder, you know, you can't solve all these problems. And we've got 84 more questions to go, which we're not going to hit. But I wonder how much this has pushed the EDA in thinking, like, what is our role and how much can we do? I'm sure you would like to help all these businesses. Someone else asked about ed tech and helping the schools. How do you figure out what are the barriers? What are the sort of the guardrails here as you make these decisions?
Yeah, so it's interesting because somebody, I think, Aaron, when you and I started on this, you said to me, oh, we have 600 registered participants. Isn't that great? And I said, no, to me, it's quite scary because the magnitude of this, as we know, is just is significant. And the EDA and the state quite candidly don't have the resources to help everybody that's being impacted by this. You know, you've heard the governor out speaking on a regular basis and saying we need federal help. Some of it has started to come in, at least through an approval process, and we're waiting for more. So what we did at the EDA was really say who's been impacted the most. Our role has traditionally been in supporting small businesses. And we looked at how can we leverage our limited resources with private partners. So in the scenarios where we are working with the CDFIs, we are providing guarantees to them, loan loss provisions to them, and providing funding to them. In the scenario where it's the Entrepreneur Guarantee Program, we're working with the investors who know the companies to get cash to these companies quickly, and leveraging that resource. Because again, we don't want to be the cog in the wheel here. We understand time is of the essence right now in this current market condition. Yeah.
So a few people have asked about, do you expect to have a program for solo entrepreneurs, sole proprietors? Any thoughts on something that the EDA might do for companies that just aren't, VC backable, but obviously could be struggling pretty significantly right now?
Yep. Yep. So again, some of those will fit into our Main Street Business grant program.
But to be fair, and I got to, I think the EDA has done a great job of responding in a relevant way and done so very quickly. So I give you a lot of credit there. 5 or 10, I think you said the max was 10,000, but 1,000 per employee. So if it's $1,000 for a solo entrepreneur, unfortunately, that doesn't go very far.
Right.
I'm not saying the EDA must solve this problem for all people, in the state, but
Yep.
that individual could really be struggling. Are there other resources you could suggest?
Yeah. So the community development organizations that I mentioned, the CDFIs, they will have micro loans available as well. And we will have those partners listed that folks can reach out to there also.
Got it. Mark, we've had a few questions about specifically what you invested in. I could tell there's a variety of stages of business here, different industries, some retail, some solo, some much, much bigger. Can you clarify again, and some people may have joined a little bit late, how much money do you put to work? What industries do you tend to look for? Make sure you maybe make clear the type of return you look for so people can understand whether or not they're a fit for venture capital in general, whether they're a fit for Tech Council Ventures.
So Aaron, well, first of all, we invest in technology companies, all right? And we're pretty agnostic about the technology, but it's technology companies. So it would be rare that we would invest in a retail business, as an example. And venture capital is generally looking for a high growth business. We would love, and thank you to Kathleen, because yes, she is our largest investor, the EDA is. But what we're looking for is we would like to imagine companies that their revenue can double year over year. And frankly, we have companies like that right now. So, but pretty technology agnostic, even though we'll do some energy, some materials, a lot of enterprise technology, a lot of healthcare technology, some fintech companies.
Okay, great. Getting to some of these questions, someone asked the name of the women's group. It's called Golden Seeds.
Yep.
So if you check out Golden Seeds, you can find, do they now have an official New Jersey chapter? I believe they do.
They do. We just held our second office hours, as I referenced. We're actively looking for new investment opportunities. Golden Seeds is a national organization. New Jersey is the 7th chapter for them. And then what happens is, again, this is individuals that are investing in companies. We syndicate our deals across our platform around the country. Got
it. Some people were asking if applying to the state programs might have any impact in their federal eligibility. You have any feedback on that?
Great question. So we have purposely looked at that, and we do not believe that is the case.
Got it. Okay. Someone mentions that they've heard from an LOL program awardee that it takes 8 to 12 months to fund. Is that accurate, and is it possible to have that accelerated?
So we have had years where it has been as short as 4 months, and we have had years that it has gone 8 to 12 months. It really depends on the applicants and their appeal process. So it's a little bit hard to determine, but we are we actually, in light of the COVID-19 response, for the first year went on electronic signatures this year. So things like that hopefully will help shorten the process.
Got it. Linda's asked, is it $5 million in revenue based on 2019 or current year?
For the guarantee program, it's trailing 12 months, $5 million in revenue.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up on the many questions here. We will wrap up in just a few minutes. There are some people who are in New York who are asking about, do you know of any sources there? The New York Economic Development Corporation, the EDC, is the New York authority there. Do you happen to know if they're doing much or what they are doing to respond?
Yeah, so we had a call with many of the economic development agencies across the country, kind of trying to compare notes. Our programs, as mentioned, go through kind of small business, Main Street business, entrepreneurial businesses. We've heard a lot of states that maybe don't have quite a robust package, but are waiting to see what the feds are doing. New York was not on that call, But I would encourage you to go to their website. As Aaron said, New York EDC. I'm sure they're putting something together if they haven't announced it yet.
Yeah. Mark, there are a lot of people here looking for your contact info. Do you want to share it, or do you want me to just direct them to the Tech Council Ventures website?
It's Mark at Tech Council Ventures. That's simple.
Yep.
.com.
Yeah, great. Some of the questions I think I've learned the answers to. Can an employee invest and qualify for the 80% guarantee? I believe the answer is no, right, Kathleen?
Arm's length.
I'm learning as we go. Someone else has said that, to clarify, are these applications available online yet? They don't seem to be able to find them, are they?
Yeah, they are not online yet. Our board just approved them yesterday.
So when do you expect they'll be live?
We're hoping next week with the kind of wizard to pre-screen people earlier in the week.
And for those who are trying to prepare to be ready, what kinds of information should they start to gather?
So I would say go on that website and look at what the specific criteria are and think about the documentation around it. So I've already mentioned NJWR 30s around employees. Make sure you have that readily available.
Got it. Kelly's asked, would you be open to retail-based companies with investors that better fit your mission and focus?
It's hard to answer that right now. We'd have to just look at it. All right.
I'm curious if you'd agree with this. I find Mark is a high energy guy who likes to learn, likes to see what's going on in different markets, and tends to take a meeting over not. I mean, I don't want to fill your calendar for the rest of the year, but is it safe to say that you're happy to have people reach out and you might be open to seeing things that might be outside of the scope?
Absolutely, for sure.
Great.
That'd be great. We're open for business.
That's right. Andre, I lost your question. Where did it go? Oh, it was a good one. They just keep popping in.
Hey, Aaron, I will mention EDA approved a new program in February for companies that are going through accelerators. So we are signing up accelerator partners currently. And if you go through one of our accelerator partners, we will match fund whatever funding they give you. And we will also give you 6 months rent to locate in any of our approved co-working spaces as well. So another resource for folks.
Got it. Peter, I appreciate that your questions weren't answered. You keep putting them here. And even though I hope you don't mean it, you're not, makes me feel like you're screaming at me in all caps. But what do you mean? So the question is, please define current in a current investor. When is the date you defined as current? So what does it mean to be a current investor?
Yeah, so someone who has, and this is in some of the program materials, so someone who has provided a note, safe, or equity to a company, and the date was as of March 9th when the emergency was declared by the governor.
Got it. Okay. So there are 89 more questions that we didn't get to, and we'll send them on and try to answer them on the site. Couple of closing thoughts. First, Kelly asked something that I think is the hardest question here, and the hardest to answer, which is if someone does not qualify for the guarantees, the grants, the loan loss provisions, etc., what can they do to keep their business thriving? And honestly, I think that the only thing that someone can do is to adapt. The council has historically run physical events, and we've had to adapt our model to be digital, to look at how can we provide value in this new normal. And it's not easy. There aren't programs from the EDA, as far as I know, that we'll qualify for. And we've had to very quickly adapt our model to see what do we do that we can generate revenue off of in this new world. And you're seeing it here. This is how we're adapting. And there's a variety of other things that we're doing that I hope will scale. But I don't think that waiting this out is the answer. I think you have to get very scrappy and look for ways that your business might change. And if you follow guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, there's opportunities to become real thought leaders in how other people in XYZ industry can adapt to this new normal. You could start a course that you charge for. You could do some basic video content with lead gen that signs them up to a program. I mean, there are some creative ways that you can adapt a traditional model to this economy. This is not a no-brainer situation, of course, but I would encourage people to lean in heavily on what's their differentiated strength and how does that move online. But it's obviously a tough time. So I want to ask Mark and Kathleen if you can end us on, and Fred did point out sole practitioners now will qualify for state unemployment also. Do you know if that happens to be true, Kathleen?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. But if you go on that website, you can ask that question and we'll get you an expert who will answer for you.
Good. But I want to close on something positive. So what do you look at in the market as signs of hope, whether it's purely economic or things you're just seeing in the business community or even in your neighbors, of things that give you some sense of positivity in what's a pretty challenging time for a lot of individuals and their businesses?
I'll give an example. So I mentioned we had our Golden Seeds office hours digitally on Wednesday night. It was kind of like Hollywood Squares. Everybody was in the boxes. And I spoke with a entrepreneur who I had met previously. And, you know, the fact that these individuals showed up, made their pitch, acknowledged kind of the turbulence in the market and how it was going to impact their business and how they were adjusting to it, to me was so refreshing. And, you know, I think those are the entrepreneurs that will do really, really well.
Yeah.
And I will say I'm extremely proud of the team that I work with at the EDA. We are open for business. Everybody's in their home. We are bringing things to our board. We are working with our portfolio companies. That's the other thing I should mention, and deferring all payments from them. So, you know, I think there are a lot of people working hard, both on the entrepreneur side and so folks know at the state side to do right by you all.
Yeah, and I mean it. I think that this is tough times for everyone. I give the EDA a lot of credit. And, you know, I don't think you could have offered a perfect solution, but I certainly appreciate you guys acting quickly to offer at least the first step of a solution. So on behalf of the council community, we certainly appreciate that effort. Mark, what are you seeing that can end us on a high note?
Well, you know what? What I'm so glad about is so many of the businesses and companies that are stepping up to try and do something in support of this. And I'll give you an example. I know of multiple healthcare IT companies, some that we're engaged with right now in conversation, that have gone ahead and reached out to health systems and offered their products for free because they know they really can help. And in the case of one company, they're actually in real time modifying their technology to focus on this remote patient monitoring to help. And there's nothing, I mean, admittedly, it might be helpful for them at some point in the future, but they're doing something to solve the humanitarian crisis we have here, not just the financial and the business crisis we're talking about. We just can't lose sight of the crisis is the humanitarian one. So I see companies stepping up. I look at what the drug companies are doing, what the device companies are doing in order to try and come up with cures and so on. There's a lot of great work being done, a lot of people stepping up. So I think we should all feel proud of that.
Yeah, I agree
Aaron,
with you.
I know you surveyed your members, and it's great to see how many of the Tech Council members are stepping up as well. Really thrilled about that.
And as a note there, one is you'll get a survey pop up after this webinar ends in a minute. We really would appreciate it if everyone fill that out. We're also going to follow up with the footage from this recording by the end of the day, so you can check the website on the njtc.org as well. And we're going to continue to check the pulse of the community week to week, so you can see the trends over time in our survey results of how people are reacting. So for those of you who are subscribed to our emails, we very much appreciate you filling those out, because it's giving insight back into the community at large and kind of the pulse of what's going on. So I really appreciate both of you spending so much time with us. I appreciate all these questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all. We will try to, we'll pass these along to both Mark and Kathleen, and if there are answers that are appropriate, we'll get them on the FAQ sites or on our own site. But I hope everybody stays safe, washes your hands, and hopefully we'll see you. We're doing these weekly webinars, so keep an eye out, and hopefully we'll see you online very soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Aaron. Be well, everyone.
Thanks for all you're doing, Aaron.
Thank you.
Very
Thanks
well.
to both.
Good to see you, Kathleen. Thank you as well.